energetic, passionate, and savvy. Gooch Live, brought to you by the good people at the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Gooch.
Hey, welcome to the Gouche Live right here, brought to you by those good people at the Hockey News, Sports Illustrated, Fired Up Network, and now the WHA 50th anniversary. And this is a special edition. I wanted to have a one-on-one with Peter Young, one of the organizers, of course, with Greg Bowden. He's a former WHA play-by-play announcer. If you don't know what that is, the World Hockey Association. Yes, in 1972 they formed, and we're going to hear it right from Peter Young as he knows everything about it. He's also a CFL announcer over the years, which is really cool because the Bombers go up next week against Calgary, and I think it's Edmonton who are in the final. He'll let us know. I wasn't watching it that closely, but I did see that Hamilton has just beaten the Montreal Alouettes pretty soundly. So the Toronto Argonauts will go up against those Hamilton Tiger Cats. That'll be just super, super exciting. Hey, listen out, without further ado, let's bring up the guy that's not only helping organizing the 50th anniversary for the World Hockey Association in October 2022. He also is going to announce with me what he's going to be doing for Gooch Live leading all the way up to there in just a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, your man, Peter Young, the sports guy.
Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you again.
We both have the logos on. That's pretty cool.
Yes, I can't thank you enough. It's an unbelievable design. It's the 50th anniversary. Of course, we're going to talk a lot about that over the next 30 minutes. We've got some other things because you are the sports guy. We're going to touch upon a couple things. One, of course, we'll talk about the Slapshot movie that will be surrounded around some of this because obviously a lot of them played there. We'll talk about the WHA and some of the leaders, and then, of course, leaders for the Winnipeg Jets. And then finally, I want to end it off with talking about your Just a Minute, and we may touch upon that Winnipeg Jets team that won last night and whether or not that's going to save our coach's job because there's breaking news in the National Hockey League. Mr. Bergevin has been let go by the Montreal Canadiens. First, Peter, let's talk about that. I want to hear your opinion on that.
Well, it's hard to believe that a team could be in the final of the Stanley Cup playoffs one year, and then 6 months later, actually 5 months later, they're really not that good right now. And I think it all started off in training camp when all of a sudden Carey Price wasn't available, and after that, it just seemed like they got a slow start. I mean, it's hard to believe. The players are basically the same players that took them to the Stanley Cup final. It's like the Winnipeg Jets. They were in the Final Four, and yet they're off to, they started off well. Two of their superstars come back to play, and they had never been the same since those two came back to play. So it's just weird the way these things happen. But unlike Winnipeg, where it's highly unlikely that major changes will be made in the management structure, Montreal just cleaned house. I mean, you knew it was coming when yesterday Scott Mellenby resigned after being told that he wasn't going to get the GM's job. Well, if you're being told that, obviously the GM's job is going to come open. And a day later, they just wiped everybody out. And instead of naming a GM, they got Jeff Gordon from the Rangers organization. But he's not the GM. He's the director or the president of hockey operations. So they'll be looking for a GM. And, there's a lot of great candidates out there. And the one name I'd like to throw out, because it probably hasn't been, nobody else has thrown it out yet. His dad was an integral part of the Montreal Canadiens. His dad was a very integral part of the Winnipeg Jets. He has management experience with the Leafs. I think Fergie Jr. might be one of the guys that they talk to.
Wow. All right, you heard it first here by PY, the sports guy. Listen, you're so well respected in the world of sport. You and I had a chance to talk in Whistler, and you told me some stories that were just unbelievable. And we'll talk about you in just a minute. But I'll tell you what, the stories that are inside that Commodore 64 that's called your head is just absolutely, truly amazing. I'm really excited to explore over these next months, obviously leading up to October 2022.
Let me just point out that just a minute you'll get tomorrow is a story I don't think I did tell you, and it involves why broadcasters should wear a jockstrap and a cup.
All right. I look forward to it.
look forward to that one.
All right. Well, listen, let's get into the WHA 50th anniversary. You were one of the play by play announcers, obviously, in 1972. That was a big deal when Bobby Hull left to come, obviously, to the Winnipeg Jets. Before we get into the specifics, talk to us about it from your perspective, Peter. You're in Winnipeg. Obviously, the NHL was not on the radar at this moment. And then all of a sudden, this great opportunity came for the Winnipeg market to get a pro hockey team.
Well, unfortunately, I was not there in '72. I didn't get to Winnipeg till summer of '74, and was lucky enough to start broadcasting immediately the WHA games on CKY TV. And in fact, one of the first games we did live, we pre-taped a couple and played them, on a Saturday afternoon. But the first live one we did was Valentine's Day, 1975, when Bobby Hull scored 3 times to eclipse Rocket Richard's record of 50 and 50. He got 51 in 49 to break that record. That was a game we did, and coincidentally, it was against one of the other greatest attractions in the WHA, Gordon Howe, who was playing in those days for the Houston Aeros, and I still have the highlights of that game on tape from 1975 Valentine's Day. And so it was great to just get here. And we both met with Normie Bowden when we were in Whistler, and one of the original Winnipeg Jet, and those teams were good, but I just happened to luck out and get here basically weeks before Anders Hedberg and Ulf Nielsen arrived, along with Lars-Erik Schubert, who arguably were 3 of the greatest Swedes to ever come to this side of the pond. And it's it's amazing that when you think about going to a Winnipeg Jets game now, in the rafters are the jerseys of Bobby, Ulf, Anders, Lars, and Abby McDonald.
Right.
Dale Howardchuk is the only Jets 1.1 player in the rafters. So great history of the Winnipeg Jets WHA franchise, still kicking around here 50 years later.
Well, really excited here, of course. Look at this. Morris Lukowicz, one of the great Winnipeg Jets also. This is very exciting. Peter Young and the others are getting this WHA 50th reunion organized. Thanks, Peter. Talk to us about, Morris Lukowicz is a very well-known name in the National Hockey League, of course, but also in those days of the Winnipeg Jets. Talk to us about Morris and his contribution. And obviously, he's going to be a big part of helping us. I know Perry Miller's there. A lot of people have said, it's very Winnipeg eccentric, like everybody. It's not. We're going to list off some names here. And I got some pictures to show, guys. You're going to see that what Peter and Greg have put together, obviously, Winnipeg was one of the arguably, if not the best WHA team, obviously winning all those AFCO Cups. They're certainly right at the top 2 or 3.
Well, there's some great players, of course, involved from all of the franchises. Obviously the Howe brothers weren't too shabby, considering one of them is in the Hall of Fame, and they had outstanding careers. Robbie Fatorik, outstanding career. So many players from that Houston team. When you think that Preston, Lukowicz, Ruskowski, Scotty Campbell all came over in that deal, John Gray, and they really didn't click until, sadly, Larry Hillman got fired and Tommy McVie came in and lit a fire under them. And all of a sudden, the 2 factions came together, the Houston side and the leftover Winnipeg side, after Anders and Ulf had left. And, they just clicked at the right time and were able to win the final AFCO Cup championship. But Luke is, not only a great athlete, probably still in incredible shape the last time I saw him. And, he and I have a lot of off-ice camaraderie as well. In 1980, Luke and I played on the same team. Luke and I and Shelley Swirsky from CKY TV competed in the CTV Superstars in Vancouver.
I actually remember that.
Where one of the it was sort of a bunch of relay type stuff, and one of them was somebody ran a mile, somebody bicycled 5 miles or something through Stanley Park. And the toughest one was the last person had to roll a tire uphill for about 300 yards to the finish line. And so, believe it or not, I know it's hard to believe it when you look at me now, but back in those days, I ran marathons,
That's a, yeah.
and I was, you know, for an old phys ed teacher, I was a semi athlete. And so, in the first race, we decided that I was going to be the runner, and and Richie Preston was representing Regina or Saskatoon, somebody in that one, and we took off, and the guy that no, Richie was representing Regina because the guy from Saskatoon took off like a shot, and Rich and I thought we were going to be embarrassed, so we stupidly kept up with him, and then at about the 800-meter mark, this guy started dying, but
Oh, good.
somehow Rich and I kept going, and Rich in the last 150 meters took off and blazed by me, but I still ran. This is stupid, but I ran a mile in 4:54. So Rich ran it under that, and so Shelly gets on the bike and she blasts on the bike. She's awesome.
Yeah.
And then Luke rolls the tire up the hill, and we win easily to go to the final. So in the final, we switch it up, and Luke's going to do the running. I'm going to do the tire, and Luke, he just wipes everybody out. He beats my time by about 40 seconds. You know, he could have been running in the Canadian trials that year practically, and we end up winning that relay. But the next year, I hosted the event in Montego Bay, along with Alan Thicke, and
Okay.
along with great friend Alan Thicke and a well-known singer in those days, Cherise Lawrence, who lives up near you now. And so Alan and I hosted, but Luke represented Winnipeg again, along with Sylvia Kuzik, the weather girl at CKY, and my great late friend, the great silver broom champion, Rod the Arrow Hunter. And so, you know Jeff Hutchinson, right? Who used to
I
be
know him. Yes. Yeah. I love him.
so at the wind-up party, it was somebody's idea, I think maybe Lukowicz's, that everybody should get thrown in the pool. And so we all decide that that's a good idea for some reason. I mean, how many rum drinks do you have to have before that becomes a good idea, you know? And so anyway, somebody, in fact, Cherise Lawrence brought this up the other day because we had some video of Jeff at the event. Somebody decided it was a good idea to throw the Minister of Tourism for Jamaica into the pool.
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah, even though she couldn't swim. And so everybody's floundering in the pool and having a great time. And Jeff comes out of the dining room area and sees everybody. And instead of getting thrown in, there's nobody left to throw him in because we're all in the pool. So he's going to come and run and jump in the pool. Yeah. And this is Charlie Simmer in there, Trevor Burbick in the pool. You know, we've got some Mark Steven from the broadcaster, Rod Phillips, the Oilers play-by-play guy. Yeah. And Jeff doesn't quite make it to the pool because he hits some water on the deck and goes straight up and bam, comes crashing down. So after we frolic in the pool for a while, we still see Jeff out in his back. So we figure, oh, he might really be hurt. So I can remember this like it was yesterday. Luke and I and Charlie Simmer and Trevor Burbick, each, like, what should you do with a back injury patient? Grab him by each arm and just
of course. Yeah. That's in the book.
We each grab him an arm and a leg, and we drag him up like 200 yards to the main area of this resort where an ambulance has been called. And make a long story short, Jeff had broken his back in multiple places, and he spent an ugly night in a dumpy medical center somewhere in Montego Bay. And then thankfully the tourism department got a wind of this and they transferred him to an elite medical center. But I was just talking to Hutch about that the other day, but I think Luke was the one to blame. I think it was Luke's
of course
idea. Yeah, I think it was Luke's idea. He'll be here this week in Winnipeg. We're getting together this week a couple of times. And so
fantastic.
I'll have to reminisce and see if that was the case or not, if it was he that started it or I started it. My memory.
But we got to get Morris on the show, of course, because I just love
the best, man. He's the best.
He's unbelievable. Hey, listen, obviously, a great story. Thank you for that, sharing with us. A lot of the people that are too young maybe to remember some of these names, but you just Google Morris Lukowicz, and that'll tell you exactly how talented this guy was. But when we talk
50 goals in the NHL, man, that's not bad. Not many people do that.
Not at all. But then when we get back to the WHA, you mentioned some names, but I wanted to read off a couple other that I know you've already reached out to. Andre Lacroix. A lot of people don't realize this guy had the all-time scoring leader with 798 goals.
Yeah.
Points. But Mark Tardif, Bobby Hall, third overall. I'm not going to read them all up, but Riel Kluche, we all know that name. Robbie Fatorik, as you mentioned, Gordie Howe, Mark Howe, seventh and eighth in their respective. Chris Bordelot, which made up this incredible line for the Winnipeg Jets. Look at that. The luxury line. Norm Bowden, Chris Bordelot, and of course, Bobby Hall.
And they became the century line when they all scored 100 points in one season, which has never been done before. Three guys on the same line with over 100 points.
That's amazing. And look, this is a great picture, obviously, with Bobby Hull and Gordie Howe. You're going to talk to us a little bit about one of the announcements. But then 10th and 11th are Anders Hedberg and Ulf Nielsen. So there's an array of players from all over
And
the
they only
WHA.
played 4 seasons.
I know. And they put some serious points up. When you look at, they only played 286 games. You had 458 points. That's Anders Hedberg, and Ulf Nielsen was just ahead of him. Talk to us a little bit about now. Obviously, there are players that were in the National Hockey League and now transitioning to the WHA. We know what happened in 1972 with the Summit Series. It'll be their 50th anniversary also just prior to this great historic event. Bobby Hall was the guy that made it all happen. Here he is signing that big contract. I was actually there watching it live, and here's Hull jumps to the WHA. It certainly changed the dynamics of it all. So talk to us a little bit about that historic moment, which made us all kind of stand up and say, wow, is this the breakdown of the National Hockey League?
Well, I didn't know that. All I knew is that, I lived in Thunder Bay in those days. I was a high school phys ed teacher and a broadcaster at the same time. And I thought, hey, at least someplace close other than Minneapolis to go watch some real high level hockey all of a sudden. And, when Bobby jumped, it rattled the National Hockey League, obviously. Not a lot of people believed that Bobby Hull would jump to the rival league, but he was not happy with the salary structure in the National Hockey League. He made that known when he was approached by Ben Hatskin and some lawyers from Winnipeg about jumping to the rival league. He was, he didn't think they would have the money to come up with. He didn't know if it was going to be a viable option. So he threw out, as he said, some outlandish figure. He said, "I'll tell you what. If you come up with $1 million, I'll sign," thinking that that's enough to scare anybody away. Well, little did he know that Ben Hatskin had already cut some side deals with some of the other wealthy potential owners of the WHA, and they all kicked in, and they all came up with enough money that when they finally went to meet with Bobby, Benny said, "Here's a contract for $1 million." And Bobby said, "You've got yourself a hockey player," and that's how it all started. So he was immediately blackballed by Clarence Campbell. That meant he couldn't play for Team Canada in '72. And so what he did was challenge the reserve clause in federal court in the United States. Until that time, NHL players, hard to believe now, this many years later, young people who watch the game wouldn't understand this when they see the salary figures of Connor McDavid and these type of players, that Gordie Howe was making $6,500 a year. Gordie Howe. $6,500, and why? Well, because when his contract came up, he had no bargaining power. He would go in and they would tell him what his next contract was going to be, because they couldn't jump to other teams. They were basically, from the time they played junior, like Bobby with the St. Catharines Blackhawks, he was tied to the Chicago Blackhawks for life unless they chose to get rid of him. And so in challenging the reserve clause, Bobby threw the entire NHL into chaos, because at that point, Doug Higginbotham actually ruled in favor of Hull's group and abolished the reserve clause. All of a sudden, players could, when their contract was up, jump to other teams.
Amazing.
All of a sudden, owners had to pay more. And then when a bunch of them started jumping to the WHA, tripling and quadrupling their salaries, the NHL owners were forced to match those offers or better them before a player did accept a contract like that. So it threw the hockey world as we knew it into chaos, which is why to this day, I'll often see young players come up and still thank Bobby, because had he not done this, who knows if it's obviously in retrospect we don't know what would have happened in over 50 years, but
Right.
but he's the reason why salaries quadrupled and why hockey players started getting paid what they deserved instead of what they were told they were going to get.
It's just fascinating when you hear that. I'm of an age where I kind of remember some of that stuff going on. The fact that a player couldn't move from another team is just beyond comprehension today. But it's great that it did happen. Listen, let's talk about the WH. How did this come together? Obviously it's the 50th anniversary. The league hasn't been, around for almost 40 years. How does it come to the forefront that the 50th? I saw a 25th anniversary. I'm not sure what other anniversaries happened, but it's certainly a fantastic opportunity for us. What's old is new, and this for me is exciting because now I can remember a lot of those times going to the Winnipeg Arena with Joyce Borger and Grant Borger and Ralph Borger, his father, is playing for the St. Boniface Saints, and going and watching, Norm Bowden, and now I get to meet him. Like he was, like I idolized this dude, and here I am on the ice a few months ago back in Vancouver. How did it all come together?
Well, I was involved in the committee that put together the 25th anniversary. It was actually 27 years after, but the 25th anniversary was in Windsor in 1999 at Casino Windsor, and maybe 500, 600 people at the gala dinner, probably 150 ex-WHA players that attended, and so that was put together by Ed Litwack and myself and Dennis Murphy, the late Dennis Murphy, who just passed about 3 months ago, and so. I also got involved with Greg Bowden in one of their Jets Pawn King games that brought back a lot of the alumni players, and with Jeff Kirbyson, who ran two very successful 40th anniversaries, the 40th year after the Jets' second last Avco Cup, the 77-78 season. And that brought back Ulf Anders and all that group. And then a year later, the 40th anniversary of the 78-79 winning Avco Cup championship teams, which was, of course, the year that the Houston players came over and beat Edmonton in 6 games, even though Edmonton finished like 25 points or something ahead of them in the regular season standings. It was late in the season that the Jets came together under Tommy McVie, and they ran the table. And went all the way to take the championship. So the last guys to ever skate off the ice holding the Avco Cup. So, it was, the history is already there. And as you know, anniversaries happen every year, whether it's wedding anniversaries or any type of anniversary. A year later, it's an anniversary of some sort.
Yeah.
And so Greg Bowden introduced me to a gentleman by the name of Larry Kaiser, who was just a little boy when the Chicago Cougars played, but his dad, Walter Kaiser, was the owner of the Chicago Cougars, who didn't quite make it to the merger years, and we struggled with a committee trying to put that together to do the event in Las Vegas, perhaps, and had no luck getting resorts on board because they wanted to wait till next year's NHL schedule came out and NFL schedule came out, and so. The rates that we were getting quoted were astronomical. They didn't want to block rooms. These are at the major resorts. You could always find $100 hotel room in Vegas, but try to get a block of $100 rooms. Just forget it. Not a chance. And so we struggled forever, it seemed, trying to do that. And we had some major people involved. Rich Rose, who was head of Caesars Palace Sports and Entertainment for 20 years. I mean, all his experience and all the contacts he had, and he couldn't even get these resorts to bend and accommodate us to the way we needed. So it just became more difficult, and so then we started looking at a possible venue in Canada and toss cities around. Winnipeg would have been an obvious choice because of winning 3 Avco Cups and being in the final 2 of the other 4 years. But this isn't a Winnipeg celebration. This is a league celebration. And so, for the same reason, Edmonton, Quebec City we gave some thought to, and no, we need a neutral site, and a neutral site that has plenty of hotel accommodations, a neutral site that hopefully wants to work with us. The tourism board wants to work with us, and because of a great friend we have in Whistler, we decided on Whistler, British Columbia. You came with us. You know what it was like. They bent over backwards for us. They did.
Well, here's where it was, right here.
There's well, you live there. In fact, I'm sure your name is on a table at Longhorn Saloon. But they wanted to when you're going to move out. By the way,
Didn't I check out of the hotel? God, I forgot.
maybe not.
Yeah,
But don't you want to go back? I mean, I left there going, why am I leaving? I want to be here. I want
it
to
is
stay
so
here.
beautiful.
And
Peter,
then
you couldn't-
last night, I don't know if you saw last night, Tim Koschel, who's our liaison in Whistler, it was their first après ski party at Longhorn.
I missed that one.
My goodness. I mean, total insanity.
Yeah.
600 people on that same patio we were on. I don't know what they call it, but champagne shooting out of a water gun, and
Love it.
yeah, just way too much fun to be legal. Well, it is legal.
Yeah, but Peter, you and I had a chance to sit with him at one of his restaurants, and the stories you were telling and he was telling, Tim just blew us all away by obviously the shenanigans that go on in Whistler have to stay. It's like Vegas. Whatever happens in Whistler stays in Whistler. However, it can
That's
be
why I can't write a book.
Right, but it can be called on one-on-one Gooch. We can tell anything we want about it. So Tim Kushel from Gibbons.com, he's unbelievable. I just loved him. But there, in that announcement, we had a couple other very important people, of course, Councilman John Grills. Talk to us a little bit about that. You getting not only did Tim obviously help guide the ship, but you guys were able to bring in some pretty big, heavy hitters. And of course, John Grills was one of them at that press conference.
Yeah, John was representing city council. The mayor, the mayor was out of town, but the mayor is actually a humongous hockey fan, and so as is John, and so the city is behind us 100%, helping us secure the Olympic venue for concerts, banquet facilities, tourism. Whistler just went over the top. Suzanne Muscat brought her whole team in from Whistler.com, and we met with them, and they're doing an amazing job of linking up on their webpage, everything to do with this weekend, handling everything from hotels for those who are non-alumni. The alumni have a specific hotel, the alumni and their families. And by alumni, we mean anybody who was ever involved in the WHA, whether it's a referee. Ron Asseltine is actually helping out now, trying to track down some of the referees from that and linesmen from that era, whether you were an equipment manager, a trainer like Scotty McVicker, who you met there. Anybody who was involved in the WHA is eligible to stay at the alumni hotel and or their family members. But that means that fans, instead of just having to search online through Expedia or something like that, if you just go to Whistler.com, they'll have all kinds of various options, price points that you can book. You can book your transportation as soon as you land in Vancouver. It's about a 90-minute drive to get to Whistler, but there's all kinds of different forms of transportation. The average person can come in. There's shuttle buses every half hour, or like celebrities such as yourself, there's helicopter service available. So there's all kinds of ways to get from Vancouver Airport to Whistler. We even went so far as to meet in Vancouver the last day we were there, and we now have a Vancouver hotel that should you happen to get there late on your arrival day or want to stay a day after you leave Whistler, we now have a hotel in Vancouver that fans will be able to click on and book. So we're taking a lot of the guesswork away. We're making it very easy for someone to partake in the activities once they decide to get there. And of course, we just added one major event a couple of days ago. It's going to be the WHA Rock and Rollers hockey game on the Sunday afternoon at noon. It'll be WHA alumni and associates of WHA alumni against the WHA Rock and Rollers, which will include Brett Fitz from Tuke and Todd Kearns from Tuke and a bunch of the musicians who will be in Whistler. And these guys play hockey all the time. In fact, play with Greg Bowden, some of them on his old timers, I call it old timers team. So you're invited to play. We just don't know whether you're a rock and roller or alumni. But
Well,
you
I'm
go,
not alumni but
okay, we'll put you in the rock and roller because they need a
well,
ringer.
yeah, I just heard that. But listen, before you sent me an incredible video that I want to show in a second. But I
Sure.
saw the love when I was there. Obviously, in Longhorn Saloon and Grill, you saw Tim Kushel and his entire staff made us feel like rock stars. So I think you and I should play on the rock star team. And then, of course, John Grills was so excited to have had the opportunity to nail it down so that we could actually be in Whistler for this event. But the one that was really interesting is when Scotty got there. He had a scrapbook of all
Oh,
these
man.
stuff. But
Red puck.
the red puck.
Yeah.
Tell us about the red puck, because I don't think anybody that's under the age of 50 is even going to know what the heck you're
No
talking
idea.
about.
Or if you just Google Bill Friday, who was the head of officials and
Love Billy.
really good referee,
Yep.
and you'll see pictures of him in the WHA with a red striped jersey. So the linesman wore the black stripes, but the head referee wore the red stripes, which was a little unique twist. We had
Yep.
one team in year one that wore white skates, the New York Blades. Come on, white skates.
Beauty.
Yeah. Anyway, and of course, in St. Paul, where the Minnesota Fighting Saints played, they had plexiglass boards, so a player is standing for a face-off, and he looks over, and there's some nice little sweet young thing in a short skirt, and the opposition team is looking the wrong way when the puck is dropped. These are
Yeah.
stories I've been told.
Yeah. No.
I didn't experience.
Listen,
And,
Dave Hansen told me a couple. So
and then the red puck, they thought, hey, let's try something different. Let's be different than the NHL. Let's try a red puck. And Scotty brought one of those red pucks. And you being a hockey player, you'd know maybe you don't see it the same way you see a black puck, which you grew up all your life playing with. And so they tried it in training camp and stuff like that. Joe Daly almost got his head taken off in the Winnipeg goal one day during practice, and that was the red
that
puck
was
was
it.
gone. See
Yeah.
ya.
All right, we'll
There's
talk
not
to us
very many
about.
of those around. In fact, Scotty
He
might
had
have
one.
a collector's item there.
It should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Hey, maybe we can sell them at the event. Hey, listen, talk to me a little bit about the event itself now. I know we're going to talk about Took and the great rock and roll show that you're putting together, but we're also going to have something very unique. Next year is also, people don't know this or remember it, in 1977, that crazy iconic movie called Slapshot was obviously first seen by us all. And they had some pretty cool characters, one of them being Dave Hansen, Jeff Carlson, Steve Carlson,
Yeah.
obviously Denny Lemieux, the goaltender, who never played in the WHA, but certainly we know that our friend Dave Hansen played for the Minnesota Fighting Saints, the New England Whalers, the Bingham Bulls. Jeff played for the Fighting Saints. Jack Carlson, who was supposed to be part of the movie also, and Steve Carlson. So there's a lot of intermixing of the Slapshot movie at the same. Obviously, it was about the WHA way some of the games ended up. That's a really key moment. We're going to have those guys there. We're going to be showing some of the films. We're going to have other guys that maybe not make it to the event. We'll come on big screen and we'll have a Slapshot extravaganza like no other. And it will be the end of all our golf tournaments that we'll be hosting throughout the summer to lead up to this great event in October. Talk to us about how exciting that is.
Yeah, that's going to be so much fun just getting together with those guys again. When you were here 3 or 4 years ago, we had a great time with the Carlson boys. Believe it or not, in 1973, I was just a young up-and-coming radio broadcaster, and I was broadcasting for the Thunder Bay Twins of the United States Hockey League, the only Canadian team in the league. And we played against Sioux City and Waterloo, Iowa, and Houghton, Michigan, and Calumet, Michigan. And the Marquette, Michigan Iron Rangers featured a line with the 3 Carlson brothers. They were like 16 or 17, 18, and 19. They wore the glasses, although not the movie type glasses. They almost looked like squash, like you'd wear the old type when you were playing squash.
Yep.
And they actually did have one band of tape right across the nose, because they kept getting in fights all the time. Never won one, but they kept getting in fights. And of course, when you get schmucked on the glass, it could bust the bridge of your nose. So the 3 brothers played on a line. So maybe somebody saw that and and decided that would be a great part of the movie. I don't know. All I
And
know
then,
is that the next thing you know, in 1977, that movie comes out, and it's the holy grail of hockey movies. There was one person, Jocelyn Peters, who's our hotel host in Whistler. Her brother is a goalie for the Philadelphia Flyers, actually, but she said she'd never seen Slapshot, and so we said, hold it, you go home right now, and you
yeah,
don't come back here tomorrow until you've seen Slapshot.
yeah,
And so it's an iconic movie that most hockey fans grew up with. Sadly, we can't play it at the Olympic Park that we were hoping to play it at because
yeah,
of the language in the movie. So we're going to have a party at Longhorns, hold
yeah,
700 people, have a Slapshot party at Longhorns. And there's a couple of things interesting in that. I mentioned Thunder Bay and the Thunder Bay Twins.
yes,
Well, Goldie Goldthorpe played for the Thunder Bay Twins, and Ogie Oglethorpe is in the movie is based on Goldie Goldthorpe.
yeah.
But here's the thing you didn't know: another Thunder Bay guy named, well, in the movie he was Mad Dog Madison,
Okay,
but he's Connie Madigan out of Thunder Bay, and
all right.
Port Arthur. He was like, when you watch the movie Mad Dog Madison, there's another Thunder Bay
Yeah,
reference for you to come in. But guess who else was in that movie? He's not credited. He's just listed as another player, obviously on the team that the Slapshot team was playing against. Bruce Boudreau. And you mentioned the name of possible coaching changes.
yes. We're going to talk about that just before we end off on
So Bruce
the WH.
Boudreau was in Slapshot.
And so is Denny Lemieux, who will be joining us. Obviously, Yvonne Barrette
He's
will
a
be
beauty.
joining us. It's going to be absolutely amazing, that part of
He's
it.
a beauty.
And that just leads up to, obviously, an incredible weekend of events. It's a celebration of the history of our game, a very important part of the game, as you've already mentioned with Bobby Hull. But I'd really like to talk about some of the other things that you're doing outside of it. Obviously, we've got some great people. I know that Barry Shelley is going to be a big part of it. You watched the show on Sam Macbeth. He taped it, and it was played this morning in Hamilton. And Craig Campbell, all the way from Adelaide, Australia. Brandon Wheat King boy, great background of our game mate. Many, many thanks having the idea about this history, and that's all to you, Peter, because you're keeping the history alive. Talk to us about other events, and then I'm going to show an incredible video that you sent me this morning.
Okay, so everybody's hopefully arriving on the Thursday of the weekend. It's the Thanksgiving weekend, and we have activities on the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So most people will be coming in on the Thursday, and so there's really very little or organized. No, I shouldn't say organized. There's not regimented activities on the Thursday, other than the fact that there's meet and greets for the athletes at the alumni hotel, and for the fans, a chance to go to various bars and saloons in Whistler. Everything's walking distance, as you know, in Whistler.
Yep.
You don't, you walk from one to the other. So Gibbons.com, or Gibbons, the restaurant chain, will be assigning different locations, different venues to different teams. So Longhorn might be the Winnipeg Jet house. Tapley's might be Quebec Nordique house. And so fans will get a chance to mingle with the players who've arrived there on the Thursday at those various functions. And then in the evening, there'll be a concert at the Olympic venue that you saw that's just spectacular. It's like having the Greek theater outdoors, a beautiful covered stage and Red Chair, one of the local groups that's just killer in Whistler, will be performing that night, and that will basically kick off the weekend. The next day, Friday, other than the memorabilia show starting and the breakout sessions with players who aren't golfing, there'll be a celebrity golf event, and that will be hosted by Kent Nielsen, the great Swedish player who won both the Avco Cup with the Jets and the Stanley Cup with the Oilers. Wayne Gretzky called him the greatest player skill he's ever seen.
He was unbelievable.
And it just so happens that his wife, Kent's about a 3 or 4 handicapper too, by the way, but his wife drives it by him by about 40 or 50 yards because she's Helen Alfredson from the LPGA Tour. So the golf event will be hosted by Helen Alfredson from the LPGA Tour.
Wow.
And Kent Nielsen. And then that night, once again, there'll be player hot stove type breakout sessions, And that night on stage, some friends of Greg's who he plays hockey with called Caribou Express, which is Jim Cuddy and Barney Bentel. And then following that, Took takes to the stage with who knows how many different guests that could show up to join them. Vegas calls them the greatest cover band of all time. I saw them last night. If you think of any Canadian rock bands from Honeymoon Suite to Blue Rodeo to the Guess Who, you go up and down the list, Streetheart, up and down the list of Canadian rock bands. I don't want to say these guys do it better than the originals, but you can't tell the difference. I mean, they did a Guess Who take of American Woman with Jeff Neal from Streetheart, blew the place away.
Oh, and here's a little take on that. Let's see if we can get her. Let's just a little teaser.
Jeff Neal just ripping it up on lead guitar. Jeff Neal, who is the band leader of Streetheart.
Yeah.
And man, they did a Streetheart song that Todd Kearns, the lead singer of Toot, nailed. And then they did American Woman with Jeff Neal doing the guitar riffs, and man, it was like through the roof good. So Toot will be the headliner. Brett Fitz is one of my great friends. He's the bass player you saw there. Another one of our great friends is hopes to be there. I saw him online today saying he wants to be there as Alec Ponovic. I don't know if that name means anything to you. Alec Ponovic is in the Marvel Hawkeye series. He's a huge hockey fan, lives in Vancouver now, but originally a Winnipegger, and a great friend of Brett Fitz and Took. And so he's been in movies with Anthony Hopkins, something like 150 movies. And so, he'll be there. And he started off as a bass player for one of the local Winnipeg bands, like in the 90s. So who knows who's going to end up on stage that night. You could end up on stage that night.
I doubt it. The only song I know is Country Roads. And I only know 3 chords: black, red, and green. Hey, listen, let's wrap it up on the WHA 50th anniversary, Peter, because we're going to be doing this quite often now. As you get updates, we'll be doing these and allowing people to obviously get an opportunity to get in first. We're going to launch a bunch of stuff before Christmas. People can go out and get tickets and get involved. Where can they go to see all this right now?
Well, WHA1972.com, you can see what's happening and all the merchandise that's available online. Everything from the hoodie you're wearing to the zipper hoodie I'm wearing to toques to sweat T-shirts, you name it. Believe it or not, even masks. So that you can find all the information there. And then, of course, soon, although not yet, you'll be able to buy tickets to the gala dinner where we'll be honoring Bobby Hull, Gordie Howe, Andre Lacroix, Alton White, and the founder of the league, Dennis Murphy. And those people will be introduced by special guests. We'll be raising money for the Bobby Hull Children Foundation, and the gala dinner will basically end the formal part of the weekend, although there'll be breakout sessions and hospitality rooms after that. Believe it or not, a karaoke night featuring a live band that has a 500-song repertoire. So you could be up on stage.
You and I are going to sing Country Roads.
Rockstar. I'll do the backup. You can be the lead, okay?
Oh, no.
Okay, so that'll be happening. And then on the Sunday, as I said, we wrap up the weekend with the rock and roller hockey game, featuring guys like Morris Lukowich, Rich Preston, guys that can still play the game. And Norm Bowden, who at 80 years old, happy birthday, Norm, today, his 80th birthday today.
Yes, it is.
And so even Norm will be out there on skates and taking on the musicians who can play too. There's, Brett Fitz can play pretty good.
Jim Cuddy.
Yeah, these guys can play. And so it'll all be fun, probably more serious than we want it to be. as
Medic.
referee, maybe that's what you should be. Maybe you should be the referee. You should
No,
control these
gosh.
guys.
They can't skate backwards. I'm all offense. All right, Peter, is it WHA1972.com?
Right.
All right. So make sure you check that out. All right, Peter Young, I can't thank you enough. I want to talk about, obviously, a little bit of announcement. We've got you coming on and doing your Just a Minute. They're fantastic. They're not just hockey stories. It's everything. You talk about present and past, and you've got that incredible voice for radio. And it is so tremendous the way you articulate the story in a very short period of time. Talk to us a little bit about Just a Minute.
Well, I started off doing Just a Minute on radio in Winnipeg in about 1982, maybe 83, and over 30 years, it went from various radio stations to 2 different television stations, and I moved down to Calgary for 7 years, and then down to the States for 2 or 3 years, and basically let it slide, and then just started it up as a podcast type thing a couple of months, about a year ago. And people keep commenting about some of the funny stories that come up, and so a lot of the stuff that I probably should have written in a book. Instead, I tell you the stories in just a minute. Although, for the most part, it ends up being just about 2 minutes. But it's a fun little way to hear stories that have not been heard. And I told you some of them in Whistler. And tomorrow we talk about a legendary Canadian tennis player who had the misfortune of getting drilled with an Yvonne Lendl serve at about 100 miles an hour in an area where you normally in hockey wear a jock and a cup. And this is in Maple Leaf Gardens in front of 15,000 people and the television audience back in the early 80s that, because there was no TSN yet, probably millions on TV saw this live. So those are the kind of stories we tell. Some of the fun things that have happened in life, from the Olympics, from the World Hockey Association, from the NHL, from various other events I've covered over the years. And then sometimes just my opinion, whether it's right, wrong. The idea is to get you talking about it. And so
Absolutely.
that'll be on with Gooch every 3 times a week.
So we're going to do one just as we end the show. We're going to do Just a Minute, but I do want to say I can't thank you enough for being on Gooch Live. Obviously, we've been talking about your career. We've talked about the WHA 50th anniversary in Whistler. It's going to be spectacular. Obviously, we've showed you the website. We've talked about Just a Minute, but I want to talk to you just a minute about the Winnipeg Jets and last night's game against the Calgary Flames. There were a lot of rumors, and I still think they're there, that there was going to be a coaching change just if the Winnipeg Jets had a bad showing last night, and you got to give them full marks. They came out and played a very good game, winning 4-2, but if it was a 4-2 win for the Calgary Flames, talk to us for just a minute about the Winnipeg Jets of today.
Well, I'm not as close to the situation as I was when I was a day-to-day broadcaster with organizations that covered the Jets day-to-day, but I'm still a Jets fan, and I know a lot of the people involved in the organization, and I trust what I hear from great friends like Scott Taylor and some of the good writers that follow the team, Scott Billick and Mike McIntyre here in the city, that follow the team daily. And, when they start mentioning the possibilities of changes, there was obviously it's died down now, but, there was a story with Chevy about a month ago that people thought maybe his days were numbered. He weathered that storm. And Paul Maurice, who's, I think he's probably the longest tenured coach in the NHL right now, but, he took them to the Final Four last year, and yet, they started off gangbusters this year. And as soon as something goes wrong, people start calling for the coach's head. So whether or not there was any truth to any of those rumors or not, I don't know. I think the players dispelled that a little bit last night by, they just got hammered the day before in Minnesota. They couldn't score any goals over their 5-game road trip, and they finish off against one of the hottest teams in the NHL, and they end up doing, not only doing well, but pulling it off after being down 2-0. They come back and win 4-2. And so obviously that cuts the heat immediately, but as we saw in Montreal today, they won 2 last night, and they gassed everybody today. So
Crazy.
I don't see that happening in Winnipeg. There's this great loyalty in the Winnipeg Jets organization that goes right down from Mark Chipman through Cheveldayoff, through Maurice, and from Maurice an extension through the leaders and his leaders in the dressing room, Scheifele and Wheeler. And so, I think a lot of it could be bluster that people think there's going to be changes made. I might be 100% wrong, but I highly doubt that there'll be a coaching change. He just, obviously you never know. And I think Mark Chipman is just too loyal of a person to make a change. And so,
Peter, I want to say this. Just as the Winnipeg Jets did it, you just dose the Flames on a coaching change, and we'll see what comes through. We're going to be listening to your Just a Minutes here on Gooch Live. Peter, thank you so much for what you're doing, not only with the WHA and bringing history to our front steps. Obviously, you now can go and check out WHA 1972 for all the information, all this really cool memorabilia. All the information is going to be there. You and Greg Bowden have done a masterful job. Thank you for including me in it. I'm excited to be a part of it. And over the next, I would say, 8 months, we are going to have lots of fun. And I'm sure it's going to be more than just a minute. All right, Peter Young, PY, the sports guy. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much, Gooch.
You're great. Peter Young, I love that guy. I'll tell you what, had an opportunity to be with him in Vancouver and then on to Whistler. It was an amazing, amazing press conference. You're going to see this week some of the excerpts from that press conference. Some of the guys like John Grills, who talks about how excited Whistler is to have this event. And again, Tim Cushel. I'll tell you what, if you go to Whistler this winter, make sure you check out Gibbons.com. They have the best bars in the town, and we had an opportunity to eat at some of their restaurants. Nothing but the greatest. Hey, you've been watching Gooch Live one-on-one with the great Peter Young, and that's just a minute. See you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Gooch Live with your host, Kerry Goulet, better known as The Gooch, brought to you by the Hockey News and Sports